Here's a place where all of us can be safe. Our stories of transformation can be safe, and all the things we want to research are safe here. This is Safe Space with Cheyenne. I'm really excited you're here, and I hope you stick around for a while, because I've got a lot to show you before I leave Earth. I love you guys. Hello, my friends. I have a question for you. Do you know what your handwriting can tell you about you? Do you? Have you ever thought about it before? Like, I know when we were all growing up and like trying to figure out how to write, we always wanted that like super pretty like cursive or just elegant stay in the line type handwriting. I was always more of like a really big scribbler, and sometimes I had to go back and it was a mix between like, you know, regular and cursive, and sometimes it would go a little crazy. I later did some research and found out that if like you're writing so fast and it's so scattered and sloppy, so to speak, that it's actually a sign of intelligence, because you can't write as fast as the thoughts are coming out of your head. However, I have a friend today. I call her Betty White. Her name is Sandra Foote. She is the owner of Write Facts LLC, and she is, there's two sides of the business, because I met you at a holistic fair. So you can come in and get your handwriting written on this beautiful pad of paper, and she's going to analyze it intuitively and tell you so many things about yourself that you didn't even know you knew, or you're like, how do you even know that from my handwriting? But my most fascinated, did I say that right? I am so fascinated with the fact that companies actually hire you for employees, personal screenings for employees, compatibilities, business reports, jury screenings, evaluation, disputed handwriting, and even team building workshops, which team building workshops back in my corporate days, I wish I'd have known you in, because I'd have brought you in for a lot of team building exercises. But before I keep rambling about how fascinating I think your business is, I would like to introduce you to everybody that's listening. Hi!
Hey, good morning. Good morning. It's so nice to see you. I'm thrilled to be on your show. It's just beyond thrilling. Anyway, my name is Sandra Foote, as you did say, and I like the Betty White. It makes me feel chipper and happy.
I love
And then
it.
we met, what was it, 2 years ago at a holistic fair.
Is it? I think it's longer than 2 years. I think we've done there's been 3 shows now.
Well, yeah, it's quite a few.
All right. Well, I'm just saying, let's not jip our friendship.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Okay, so I have been doing handwriting analysis for over 32 years, and I'm really kind of amazed at how much I learned just on my own, even after I went through the Graphoanalysis Society and 1991, I was certified, and then found a group in Kansas that was part of the society, and I picked the smartest guy in the whole room, and I'm figuring he just can't be that smart. I mean, you can't find those things in handwriting. And so I stuck my handwriting in his face, and I said, now see, what's my problem? And he told me right away what my problem was. And his name was Roy Smith, and I picked him to be my mentor. He was my mentor for 24 years, and then he died, and so I'm on my own. But I have all his training behind me, and I'm just always pleased that people are interested in what I do. So how I got started in it is that my son and I went to the library, and he wanted to see some cool books. And so we went to the psychology section, and a lot of the books there I wasn't really interested in. But I saw this one by Milton Bunker that was talking about what your handwriting tells about you. And I'm going, yeah, right, that's funny. And so I checked the book out. And at that time, I really didn't know who I was, because of various circumstances in my childhood that I had no control over. I just survived. And then I was raising my kids, trying to do the best I could. So we went to the library and found this book. I checked it out, And I'm going, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. And it's just like, oh, wow. And so then I checked it out again after the 2 weeks was up. And then I checked it out again and again and again. And I started figuring out that my writing was actually telling me about my personality and why I respond to people the way I do, and why I liked my alone time, and why I liked the visit, and I was outgoing, and all the things that to other people were obvious, but to me, trying to figure myself out, it wasn't that obvious. So anyway, after a couple years, I asked the library if they'd just sell me the book. Well, they couldn't do that again, apparently, but I wrote to Milton Bunker and asked him to tell me about my personality. And I wrote him this long letter, Well, he didn't answer it. Well, I didn't know he died too, So then I found the International Graphoanalysis Society, and graphoanalysis means grapho, handwriting, analysis, of course, is analysis. So anyway, I joined the group, and I was a member of that group for many years. I think I stopped my membership in 2015 or something like that. Anyway, kind of went on my own and branched out, and I worked for companies. I worked for Axiom Business Systems for quite a while in Australia, and I'm working for ERP. It's called Go To My ERP, and it's a technical company with a lot of technical involvement, but they need to have people that work remotely and that can work together as well as remotely. And so he's an amazing client, and we have never met in person. We met on Zoom once, and we have the most amazing relationship because we're able to talk about his company and the people that he wants to hire and make sure that they're a good fit. Now, that might sound kind of interesting, like why would you select people to work for a company? Why can't you just give everybody a fair shake? Well, if I'm going to apply at a nursing facility, and that's really not my cup of tea, do you think that I'm going to be happy within 3 months? Well, no, I'm going to quit the job because I can't handle the stress or whatever nursing involves. So my job is to make sure that if you don't really want the job, to exclude you from the personnel file before you even get on, because I want you to be happy too. And that's how I met my current client, Robert Epley, as I did a handwriting of his. I analyzed it for Axiom Business Systems, and they wanted to have him be in a certain position. Well, he was an entrepreneur and would not fit that position. So I told the Axiom Business Systems, no, it wouldn't work. Robert is now working in his own company, happy as all get out, and able to do what he wants to do as an entrepreneur. So that is basically a public example of a person that didn't get hired in one company, but actually started his own because of the analysis.
Well, I mean, so I think it's extremely powerful because, especially from in my, I like to call them corporate days, turnover. I worked in a very high turnover industry anyways. You're not really like meant to stay there. You're like there to stay to get some extra money, move up in the ladder, like move on to something else. But your business really helps control that, not just them coming into the interview and knowing how to say the right words and do the right things and wear the right outfit, so to speak. And then you're right, like 3 to 6 months down the road, they're just like, yeah, this actually isn't for me. I got to go. And that was one of the biggest things that we talked about, where we're just like, okay, if we're losing people, it's on us. Why are we losing them? How are we losing them? What can we do to keep them? Like we were always obsessed with conversations of how to control turnover. So your business astounded me because from the get-go, you could just get a couple samples of some handwriting and you give out these very thick, detailed reports of this person and their productivity and what their productivity will be down the line. And that's what I find so fascinating, because I haven't experienced or worked through like an employment. I definitely got you telling me all about myself at the fair. And I was so blown away, not only like by your intuition and the feeling and the way that you're guided and know how to say things, but I hate to be like the science behind it, because I don't even understand it. I haven't researched it enough to go, how does she literally look at handwriting like this and do this? It's incredible. And I have talked to, like I had a friend, David. He came into the show and he had been practicing calligraphy for a couple months, and he noticed through practicing calligraphy that it was starting to change his handwriting over time. And it was his first time at one of these fairs, and he's like, what do I do first? And I said, you have to go get your handwriting read. And he just goes, what? And I was like, I said, just go do it. I'm like, you will not regret it. I'm like, it's going to blow your freaking mind, and it's going to send you on a whole different rabbit hole that you've never been down before, because it's another characteristic about yourself that you've never paid attention to, because you're just like, oh, my handwriting is this. Like, it's not like it's going to tell you anything about yourself, right? So he comes back, and his face, I mean, he's like one of the happiest guys I've ever met in my life. Like, so his face was just like, oh my gosh. He's like, how does she know? And I'm like, I know. That's the magic in the situation. Like, you're completely validated on a lot of things that are like either stopping you, or here's a fear, here's something that happened to you. Like, all of these things that like you really don't talk to people about, right? Like, it's kind of hard for you to analyze. So the fact that you can sit there with just that person's handwriting and be like, okay, so we're going to talk about this right now. And they're like, I see people, like I walk by your booth and they're like, how does she do that? You know, and like husbands and wives will come up, like before they do the compatibility thing, like the wife or the husband will sit down and like they'll go away with the pad and paper and they'll just be like, honey, you have to go sit down. Like, I know like our brains can't wrap around it, because again, we're not trained to think that our handwriting tells us anything about us. It's still a very broad category. If you go out there, it's like, if I have sloppy handwriting, if I have, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many, It's just still such a broad category of, it's kind of like horoscopy, right? It's just like, oh, if you have this handwriting, you're kind of like this. If you have this handwriting, you're kind of like this. Well, it's really
not like horoscopes, though. I mean, horoscopes and
I'm not
astrology.
saying about your work. I'm saying about the research that I'd done, where it was just before I knew your work. I was like, okay, so I might be intelligent because I write really sloppy and fast. Cool. That's all I knew. But then I go to you, and I don't remember the details verbatim. I told you, look for my papers so I could pull them up and be like, look at all the stuff she showed me. But at the time in my life, because we like to redo them at the fairs over and over to like, you know, see what changed, keeps both of us up on our games. The things that you pulled out of that piece of paper was like better than a tarot reading, you know? And it's just, it truly still blows my mind. It's still fascinating. Like, my mind is still like, how does she do that? How does she do that? How does she do that? Over and over and over. And it repeats. And I know that you're, I mean, classically trained, right? I mean, you had such a great mentor.
I learned through the Graphoanalysis Society, I learned what each letter meant, what each stroke meant, what each dot on the paper means, what slant, what depth, size, depth, size, and how round it is, the shape of the stroke, everything like that. So analytical people are not often the ones that take you at first glance. Analytical people are the ones that will find the trouble first, and so they're good troubleshooters. And so that's great to be a troubleshooter as long as you have the solution to the trouble. If you don't, then you can be someone that nobody wants to be around because all you find is trouble. And so when you write to the with the slant that goes to the right, you're outgoing, and if you write to the left, it's because you're shy. If you write straight up and down, it's because you're objective, and the size matters, because when you write large, you're very aware of your surroundings. When you write tiny, you shut all your surroundings out. And so handwriting is like your EKG of your personality. And so when I find the issue of the personality, the things that you have to deal with, then I give you graphotherapy, which changes your writing, which is just in reverse of the EKG. It's going subconsciously from your hands to your head instead of your head to your hands. And so it's easy to explain to people, but the concept is hard for them to understand sometimes. And the biggest thing I look for when I'm looking at handwriting at the fairs is their communication. And so I'll find, well, if they communicate well, I will look for other things in their writing. But if they don't, sometimes, I'll see that a female was dominant in their life that they had to listen to, that maybe they didn't really want to listen to, and they didn't like their opinion, or they didn't like the way they were disciplined by that person, but it's affected them their whole lives. So say your mom was really harsh on you, and you had to listen to what she said regardless of your opinion. You grow up thinking that all women are the same as your mother. And so I'm there to say, your mother's one person, the other women in your life are other people. So don't confuse them with your mother and her issues. And then I give them a graphotherapy and tell them how to write a certain letter a certain way that will help alleviate that problem. And then the same holds true if the dad was harsh on the child, if the dad spanked him too much or ridiculed him too much, and then it affects their work life and their professional life. And many times you'll see where the dad was very helpful in the work environment, but not helpful in the personal environment. So it gets really detailed, but that's what I usually hone in on at the fairs. And then when I start talking to the clients, it's like the intuitive part is when the science kicks in, and then everything I know pulls together to make a whole personality out of that writer, out of that client that's in front of me. And often I'll look like past them, like I'm looking past the camera here, and I'll look past them and I will say all sorts of things that apply to them, and they're going, how did that happen, And I even have a hard time understanding how it happens. I don't even understand that how I do it. It's just like it's a process. It goes from the writing to my brain to my intuition. And I was taught by Royce that I'm highly intuitive, but I didn't understand what intuition was. And so he kept explaining to me that it was a God-given gift that I have, that I was able to do what I do, especially with handwriting. And then one day it's like, oh, now I get it. And he says, teach you, and you finally catch on. And so, we have a hard time understanding ourselves more than anyone else does. So I did a team builder workshop for the company in Australia that I worked for a few years, and it was Axiom Business Systems. And one of the letters of recommendation, or the letter from one of the clients there, he says, thank you for the effort you put into today's team builder. Over many years, I've done various team builders using DISC, Myers-Briggs, TMS, etc., and have used generic boxes to describe each person, and then generic box-to-box rules. And see, we're not all in a box. We're all individuals. There are no two people alike. There might be similarities, but there's no two people alike. It's just like your fingerprint. It's always unique just to you. And yes, it changes. It changes from day to day, and it can change hour to hour depending on how much caffeine we have, or what medication we're on, or what stress we're under. But the general characteristics follow through at all times. If they don't, then you have someone that has some major issues. And I'm not a psychologist, so I can't tell you. Again, I don't like putting people in a box. I don't believe all bipolars are bipolars the same way, or ADHD. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the same kind of anxiety showing through in everybody. There's always a reason for all of those things.
I love that you brought up the personality tests, because those have always just annoyed me anytime I had to take them for a company. And I, like you, like I felt like I was put into a box. And there were things like professionally that they would hit that I would be like, yeah, that's accurate, that's accurate, that's accurate. But there's so much more about me than what I have ever seen revealed on like the business aspect of those. And they annoyed me because I felt like I was being treated like just a generic ABC personality. It's like, oh, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. I'm like, I refuse these labels. Like, I mean, I know I have to take this damn personality test to get this test or this promotion, but this is really annoying. So even when I found you, I was like, there's another way. And there's another way to not even like cut out part of the employee and actually bring 100% of them up to the front and be like, this is who you're getting. Because interview questions are still pretty generic, right? It's like, yeah. Can you do the job? Are you going to quit? What's your last work history? Are you passionate about, like it's just so freaking standard. I have interviewed thousands of people from being a hiring manager for my old job. And I think it's probably the reason that I like interviewing now, like on topics that I actually like, because I had to go and like, first when I started out, I had to have like a list of interview questions in front of me. And like, they were so boring. And I was like, I need to know more about your personality. Like, anybody can really do this job. You just have to be nice to people, learn our menu, and like, follow the rules, right? But I was like, I want to know personally who I'm hiring, because you need character here. You need to have, it's kind of like a Broadway show that serves food sometimes, So you kind of got to be like really peppy and stuff. And usually when people come in for interviews, they're like, I want the job. I hope I don't mess this up. So it's like, don't be yourself, right? So I'm sitting here, and eventually like I'll get 2 or 3 questions deep into it. And I'm like, listen, I really need to know who you are. Like, I need to just kind of like loosen up, like have some fun with me, because I'd like to see who I'm actually hiring. Because what I've noticed when I started hiring people, I would get the interview personality of them for roughly 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then who they actually are would come out. And I had a high percentage rate of, wow, I really like who you are. And I had a 30% rate of, who the F did I just hire? Like, I went back to their interview, and whether they were just like too much, or they were like really freaking lazy and just like manipulative and just like drama, all of that crazy stuff, I was still just like, how did they fool me in this interview? This is crazy. And it always came down to the generic questions that I had to ask to see if they were compatible with the job, and the fact that like I think everybody goes into this like robotic, please hire me personality, like, yeah, I'll be good. No, I totally want to work for your company the rest of my life. Yes, I'd be a great fit to your company. And again, it's just all like generic over and over. But I will say I did like to like doctor it up with like, if you could have any superpower you wanted, what would it be? Like if you could, if you could have any, I don't even know. That was probably my favorite one at the end, because it would be super serious all the way through, like kind of some giggles at the end. I'm like, okay, last question, and this is the biggest determination on if I can offer you the position. And they're like, okay, and they sit straight up. I was like, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And they're like, really? I'm like, really? Like, think big, bro. What do you want? And that kind of helped like break the ice and stuff. But again, I really wish that I knew that you existed back when I was actually a hiring manager, because the individuality and the way that you're able to encompass all of the person and shoot it down the road for the employer to help with turnover, still amazing. But the team building workshops are a really great idea. Can you talk to me about jury screening? Are you like allowed to talk
I haven't actually done jury screening because I'm not in an area where it's needed. And I mean, I can do it.
Is that what it would be then?
It would be the personality if they gave me the questionnaire. So yes, I'm qualified to do it, but I've never actually done it. I participated in jury selection. Oh gosh, I think it was in 2011, and it was about an apartment complex, and they needed to is it HMO, the organization that takes care of homes. They didn't like the way the roofing company patched up the roofs of the apartment complex, and so the people that were hiring the attorney I was participating with, they were the roofing company, and the HMO was the ones that were prosecuting, wanting to have better roofing tiles. They wanted them all to match. So I told the handwriting expert that was actually working on it, I said, well, you don't want anybody that likes everything pretty. So you don't want anybody with a lot of dignity and pride on the jury, because they're going to vote in favor of the prosecutor. And I said, you want somebody that doesn't care what color or anything about the tiles. They just want it to be serviceable. So you want just, for lack of a better terminology, you just want the regular everyday people that just, it's serviceable, it works, don't mess with it.
Yeah, no leaks.
And so,
Said no leaks.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't leak, it's okay. And so anyway, I don't know that I know how that trial came out. I was never involved in that after that. But the handwriting expert that was actually doing the selection, she said my ideas were great, and that she used them. So, but that was a long time ago. But that's what I would look for if somebody is being accused of, I'll just say, being angry with somebody else, then I kick all the people off that have anger issues and have just people that are cool and calm and collected. So anyway, it's a detailed process. So
are you allowed to talk about being an expert witness in any?
Yeah, I've actually testified. The very first time I went to court, I was a surprise witness, and so the other side, the prosecuting side, wanted to have a certain property, and they said that it was given to them by Grandpa in the will. Well, I found that Grandpa didn't even create the document, and Grandpa didn't sign the document, so it was invalid. And so they found out that I was a handwriting expert, so that document didn't even go into the proceedings. They took it out of the proceedings. So the next time I went to a deposition, and the deposition was interesting because the attorney tried to disqualify me and discredit me, and I stood my ground, and he got very upset, and so my deposition actually helped out my client. So that was helpful. And depositions are not when you're in the courtroom. They're in a conference room usually, with everything's recorded. And then the next time I was in, there was a grandpa that gave his El Camino to one of the grandkids. And so the grandkids were fighting over who got the El Camino, even though Grandpa said, yes, this is who he wanted it to go to. And so it always helps to, and I know with the interviews, that's what people do, but when you're in court, if you're an expert witness, you have to dress right, talk right, act right. Everything has to be according to the process. You have to look credible to be credible. And the opposing handwriting expert, actually, she dressed nice and everything, but she didn't dress right. She didn't talk right. And when my client cross-examined her, he had her shaking in the chair, literally shaking, and while he cross-examined her. And then the next time I testified against a FBI examiner, and he was retired, and he and his client, I don't think, communicated really well. And he thought he had the authentic document, and he did not, because there was none available. And so we testified on that, and that was real interesting because it was in front of a jury trial. And when your attorney client talks to you, you can talk pretty much freely and let everybody know what you do and why you do it and all that sort of thing. Then when they cross-examine you, the best thing to do is say yes or no. And that's good for anybody to know that ever has to go to court. If you're cross-examined, it's yes or no. If your client is talking to you or your attorney is talking to you, then you can talk freely. So we prevailed in that, and that was actually a felony trial. So my client prevailed, and I was thrilled over that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Can you tell me about the compatibility handwriting that you're able to do?
Okay, so when I work for my clients, I give them a graph analysis. Yeah, let me see if I got one. Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just a grid, and then I do if they're below average, average, or above average, and then I rank them from 1 to 10. Then if they make it to be either 6 or 7, then I do a comprehensive report on that personality that the grid does not involve. And then after that, I compare, I'll say Tom with Robert, and I'll see how well they work together. And so they're both pretty much outgoing, and so you figure they can get along well and do what they need. But then if they got a John or somebody else that's involved, then I do the compatibility to see if Tom, Robert, and John can get along together. And John might be shy, and so usually if people are shy, they're kind of self-defensive. They don't go on the defense, but they're self-protective is what I needed to say. And so they don't want to have anybody infringe on them on an emotional level, because the person that is shy had something bad happen to them when they were real little tykes, and then they look for a safe space. So anytime after that trauma that child had, they go back to the safe space. And so if somebody's shy, they go back to the safe space before they reach out to other people, and they have to get comfortable. And so then you want to make sure that they're not a time waster. So if they're conservative with their time, energy, and money, then that might work for some companies. But yet in marketing, you want somebody that is more generous and more of a risk taker. And some people are not risk takers. And so if you want a real energetic group, you want people that are willing to take a risk, that are secure in who they are, and willing to see something new. They want to get up higher on their goals. They want to always reach the higher goals. They don't want to stay in the comfort zone down where it's nice and easy and comfortable. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it
sort of?
just still blows my mind. Like, so do you do like couple compatibility too?
Yes. Okay. Now, at first when I started thinking about compatibilities, it's like, okay, Sandy and Dennis, are they compatible? And it's like, no way, because they are so opposite. And it all comes down to respect for the other person's point of view and the other person's beliefs and the other person's way of living. And so if you have somebody that is super, super chatty, well, the quiet one usually loves the chatty person because they can't do that and they want to be with the chatty person. And then later on in the relationship, they're going, why are you talking so much? Man, you just drive me nuts because you talk so much. Well, that's what drew them together in the first place. So just having the respect for people within their environment, and when they're living in a close situation, just respect them, respect each other for who they are. So it doesn't matter if you're opposites. Opposites do attract, but sometimes compatibility is with the same type of personality. What I actually look for is like if somebody has anger issues, or somebody has a temper, or anything that can be harmful to the other person. That's what I look for with compatibility. Otherwise, most things are compatible. Sometimes you'll have somebody with a big writing and then another person will have small writing. And are they compatible? They're opposites. Are they compatible? Well, the person with big writing is talking to the person with little writing and they're going, hey, aren't you listening to me? Haven't you heard a word I say? And the little writer goes, no, I really didn't. So what you need to do is call, if you're the big writer, call the little writer by name. Say, hey, honey, I need to, or hey, John, or hey, Sally, whoever is the small writer, call them by their name because that will get their attention to you on an emotional level. And once you have their attention, the small writer will focus on you and you will have their undivided attention. And so that's a compatibility thing that I've often told people. And then you have the heavy line writer versus the light line writer. And so the person that writes with a light pressure, they need to be told that they're loved a little bit more often, or that you appreciate them, give them compliments to make them feel good. And the one that has a heavy writer, you don't tell them you love them all the time because you told them 3 years ago that you did, and they're good with that.
Again, it's just so mind-blowing. You can see so much. Especially the one I remember you brought up in mine was like how deep you actually write into the paper. And I was like, I can't even believe that's a thing. Like there's so many little intricate details in all of our handwriting that we just have no idea. So I'm curious to talk about the intuitive side of it. Have you had like, I want to say like claircognizant, like just knowing? Do you have experiences of that like since you were a kid? Like intuitive
I wasn't aware of it, but yes.
Yeah, but you were like, oh, why do I know this?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Well, but I wasn't aware of it. So, when people would first meet me, they'd go, oh, hi, Sandra. It's nice to meet you. And, we'd be like best friends until I opened my mouth and say something that they knew that I wasn't supposed to know. And so people became very cautious around me, and I didn't understand that. I didn't understand my intuitive side until Royce told me and taught me. And it took him a long time to teach me because, you look in the dictionary and what's intuition? Well, it's a knowing. And I'm thinking, knowing what? And so then I bought different books, and this is a cool story. Okay, so I went to Barnes & Noble. Never been there in my life. And I was spending time with a friend of mine there, and we had like 4 hours to kill. And I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do in this store? There's so many books. I don't even know what I would want to look at. And so I was there for like 2.5 hours, and then I happened to look at this one bookshelf, and the book was like right in my face. You know how they're all like this? Well, this was face forward, and it said intuition. And I go, okay, I have to buy that. And so that was my first intuitive book I bought. And then it went into the psychic realm, and I'm going, no, I'm not interested in that. So then I bought some more intuitive books. And the more I bought, the more educated I became in intuition and the different kinds of intuition. And we all have intuition. But when I looked at handwriting, it's like, okay, if we all have intuition, how can I see what everybody has within their writing? And your intuition is very cognitive, since you just reminded me that you write heavy into the paper. You have cognitive intuition where you know what's going on. You can see things and feel things from what you see, hear, and feel. And the kind I have is the one that's the hardest to define, and that's when it just flows through me, and if I don't catch it, it's gone. And so that's clairsentient. And so you're clairaudience and clairvoyant, right?
I've experienced all 5 of them at the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and the ones that I tune into the most would be clairsentient, clairaudient, and claircognizant.
Yes.
Those are, I have 3 out of the 5 that I actually prefer to keep and work on and like figure my on and off switch on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I always have someone talking in my right ear. It's almost like they're explaining to me what people are saying. Like I understand what you're saying, but like they'll tell me like other stuff. And then like the third eye, it's like Pictionary with spirit guides. Like they'll show me images, or they'll send me a song, so many different things. And I can feel, so when I first started getting into it, I started my yoga certification, and I went through like mappings of the brain. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started, like I knew how to feel my body from yoga, thank God. But I was like, I'm noticing when these voices are coming in that certain parts of my brain are lighting up. Like I can hear certain people on the right side, I can hear certain people on the left side, but if they're coming from the left side, I can actually feel the stream of thoughts like come out the back of my head. This part will light up, like so many things were happening. So I really took some time to figure out like what that feeling was. So when I was communicated with, I knew who it was coming from, if it was my people, if it was the people of who I was talking to. And I've directed most of it over to my right ear now. Usually if it's left ears, it's ancestors and past loved ones coming in, because they usually always stand over here for me to like come talk to me. But all of like any guide, anything higher dimensional, I would say, is always in the right ear. All the intuition, all the clairsentient, the music only comes in the right ear usually. It'll come all over my body if I'm laying down and meditating, but if I'm like going along in life and I'm like, you know, feeling almost like flighty and ungrounded, it's like they send me a song to remind me to like go chill the fuck out. You know, or they're like, hey,
what you said about the left and right, that's true in handwriting too. Anything to the left of the slant, the left of a letter, whatever, it has to do with the past. Okay, so it has to do with the past, your mother, yourself, and withdrawal and things like that. And then the right is always others, father, opportunities, ambition, and forward thinking. And so handwriting is divided up in so many segments. There's also the head, the torso, and from the hips on down. And then there's what else is there? I mean, that's the main areas. And then when you see that you're going forward, then you can reach out to other people and understand them, and they understand you easily. But if you're shy, then they don't understand you, and they wonder how they can reach you because you're unattainable, because you may have withdrawn. If you're objective, people kind of think you're a snob because you don't talk readily. You don't respond at all, so you have to stop and think about it to see if it's the right or wrong decision.
I feel like I'm
And
all
so,
of those things.
huh?
I said I feel like I'm all of those things. I don't think
Well,
I
yeah,
can
I
just
think
pick
you are.
one.
I think you are.
I remember, oh God, a couple months ago I was hanging out with one of my friends. She's highly intuitive, reader, Reiki, all the good vibes you could ever imagine from a human being like popping into your life. And we were with one of our other mutual friends, and we were kind of like compliment training all of us and like all of our gifts, and we're just so grateful that we're all friends, hanging out, developing, and we're really good for each other. And then like she just pops in, she's like, yeah, she's like, Cheyenne, we just love you, but you're so mysterious. And I was like, what? I'm mysterious? And they're like, yeah, there's just something about your energy. And I was like, I literally have a podcast where I'll tell you anything you want. I'm like, I will, like, I've published my journals, for Christ's sake. Like, I did not know that. Like, I know that, like, I have the introvert extrovert thing about me where I'm very outgoing. I love to meet people. I love going out. But sometimes I am the exact opposite, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to read my book. Leave me alone. Don't make eye contact with me. And it's just different days where, like.
But there's a reason
indicator.
why you do that, and I would be able to see the reason you do that.
I know you would, and it would probably shock the shit out of me because I'm like, oh, you're so right. You're so right. But I mean, I guess like I've always enjoyed like the devil's advocate of my life, whether it's being that amazing outgoing person and then being that person who puts a hat on and I just wants to disappear. I've fallen in love with both aspects of myself. My friends have just recently seen like how I act when I'm kind of in like hermit mode, and I'm not like, like as outgoing and thriving as I am like at the holistic fair for 3 days. I'm like, oh my God, the hills are alive with the sound of music, And then like I come home and I'm like, okay, like belly down on the couch, don't want to talk to anybody, put on, probably like Ancient Aliens in the background or some History Channel thing about ancient civilizations, and like I'm just going to go away for a bit. And I mean, I think that has a lot to do with, I've always kind of been that way, but I thought that there was something wrong with that. But solitude is where I've learned so many things, not only about myself, but about the world. It's where I learned to play piano first when I was a kid. It's where my writing grew. You understand that. So I really have taken a note from a line that Oprah Winfrey said on a show. I always forget A Wrinkle in Time, that's what it's called. And she said, your flaws are actually your gifts. And like I remember hearing that, and I was just like, yeah, they are, because I've always been told I talk too much. And yeah, probably at the time I really wasn't saying much because I was like really young and in my 20s and just excited to talk. But I was like, now I'm like, yeah, I really do enjoy talking. I am surprised I don't know when I take a breath. I'm just happy to talk. And I love talking about this. I love researching this. I love presenting all of these alternative perspectives to you and your intuition. And I want you to go, oh, that's so cool. Or just, liven up that curiosity, because it's like when we quit growing, that's when the ignorance sets in. And I had a moment like that in my earlier 20s where I took a corporate job really early. So like from the 3D perspective, like I was successful. Like I had the job, I had the car, I had the 401k, I could spend money on whatever I wanted. I had a great credit score. Like I was climbing that ladder. But I just felt so ignorant. I felt like so dead inside. And luckily, like I had yoga to kind of like keep jump starting me and stuff. But I would feed and water myself enough to just get back out there and climb the ladder again. And it was just like cyclical. It kept going. And I finally hit a wall in like 2018, 2019. And I couldn't do it anymore. And my employer couldn't do it anymore with me either. Because I was just like I'm getting worse. And I realized that those negative emotions is what we call how you're not supposed to act, how you're not supposed to do. They were really big indicators for me that I'm like, I've learned all I need to learn here. If I don't close the door is going to be closed for me.
Yeah.
And I do tend to kind of like act out if I'm not, it sounds bratty, but it's like if I'm not happy, but I'm also like not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And whether I didn't have the courage to leave because I didn't know how to leave, or the fact that I didn't want to go home and tell my family, like, yeah, I just threw my career of almost a decade away that I've been building up that kind of just got tossed in my lap anyways. You know, I know a lot of people go out there like waiting for promotions and working their ass off for them. And they were kind of like, do you want this? Like, we think you'd be good for this. You should do this. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll try that. Oh, yeah, okay, I guess I'll try that. And then money speaks, you know, especially when you're living in a metropolis. So you just kind of take the promotions as they come. But now it's completely different because all of those things that I felt like were bad, unlovable traits, so to speak, I mean, they're just a part of me. And some of them, they do need a leash around them, and they know, well, then no, we're not doing that. But for the most part, like, I mean, I thoroughly enjoy every aspect, whether it's the hermit mode of me, the one that needs solitude, and for you to leave me alone. If I have to tell you to leave me alone more than one time, it turns into fuck off, kindly. Like, get away from me. I'm having conversations in my head. I'm writing. I'm about to journal. I'm about to meditate. Like, this is me communing with the divine. This is how I do it. Fuck off. Which, I mean, I don't say it to my kid or anything, but I've had to say it kindly to a couple people because they don't enjoy solitude and alone time. Like, they had to be around other people.
Yeah, some people are really needy.
Yeah, but I used to be really needy, and I still think like I have my moments where I'm like, oh, I'm so needy, but I'm actually just like, I'm a big personality. I'm loud. I'm exuberant sometimes, you know. And then on the opposite, I'm like, all right, well, it's time for me to go, you know, like my curtain's closing, my battery pack's a little out, like I listen to myself and I know when that energy's kind of going down, so I'm gonna go ahead and make my exit out the back doors. Nice to see you all. But I do have a question. I don't know if you know this, but so like I was born left-handed, but when I went to school, they taught me to write right-handed. So like I had a left-handed bow, I had left-handed golf clubs, anything that you would actually need, like left-handed wise equipment, we bought that for me, but I was taught to write right-handed. So the way that your writing shows which side, like what type of brain you are you a left brain or a right brain person? So one conspiracy, they made everybody write right-handed so it would make them only light up the left side of their brain when they wrote, because the meridian lines are like connected contralaterally, right? So I was curious if you knew any like differences in right and left-handed people. I know there's people that can write both, but is there significance based on your work that would tell you anything about that person based on if they were left and right?
When I did an anonymous note for law enforcement, I could tell if somebody wrote with the left hand. It's not always easy to see if they write left-handed or right-handed because you can write with your teeth, your feet, doesn't matter. Your writing will be the same. And you will write, it's like brain writing. It's like your personality is continually the same no matter what you write with. But I really, I don't think I can tell if you're right-brained or left-brained. And it depends on how much intuition shows. And even though we all have intuition, the people that see or that have the intuition that they see, feel, and hear, the tangible type intuition, they would be more linear. So I guess that would be what, left brain? Okay. So
Linear,
maybe I
logical,
could tell
is that
that
what
way,
you mean?
but I never thought of it like that, because there again, you have to compartmentalize people to do that, and I don't like putting people in a box.
Oh, absolutely. I am obsessed with the right brain, left brain, the masculine, the feminine. Like the fact that the hemispheres are one way, the sides of the body are one way, and the way like it can literally like DNA spiral down all of you. But then you get into like meridian lines, mapping your emotional body. And I've said this so many times, like if there are like avid listeners out there, they're like, oh my God, she's talking about meridian lines again. Because they're transformational for me in my body, in my practices. And I mean, I learned it through yoga just when I first started doing it in 2013, but then really embodying the practice and studying it more and seeing how it applied to my overall health and really figuring out like everything on our body has a purpose, you know?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Whoa, like our whole body is really just like a message system from our brain to be like, hey, like this is going on, listen up. Okay, well, if you don't listen up, something bad's gonna happen and it's gonna keep getting worse. It's gonna keep hurting in your body. And I do have a lady coming on to talk about dis-ease in your body and how, you know, like it downloads emotionally in your brain first. If you disregard it, it's going to physically manifest in your body to get your attention. If you keep pushing it away with like suppressants and all this other stuff, like it's never going to go away. You have to go to the root of it and like pull it out and look at it and examine it and like let it go. And I think that's just some powerful research on its own. I know there's a lot of skeptics out there when it comes to like bridging anything like energetic and metaphysical with like regular modern day science and all of that. And I really need to find the year that this happened. That there was a year where science and religion got together and they were like, okay, we're science. We're actually going to only study all of the physical. We're going to do a little bit of quantum physics, but only like the mathy math part, you know, like all that. And then anything that we cannot see, cannot touch, like all of the spirit and the metaphysical is actually going to go to the church. And we're science, we're not going to study it, and we're not allowed to do anything about it, right? It was literally a division of study.
Yeah, I read about that, and I forget what year it was.
Me too. I mean, it was hella back there. I know that for sure. But when I found that, I was just like, what? All this shit is orchestrated. Like, what do you mean? Like, there was intention to split spirit and science.
There was.
Unknowing, you know, you can't see it type thing.
But it's coming back. It's coming back.
Oh, it's bridging. It's hardcore. And I mean, like, that's one of my favorite things to say is, like, I love bridging spirit and science. But I didn't even get that exact sentence until I sent one of my friends the gene keys as, like, a little, like, life helper book. Because I was like, dude, you don't read it all at one time. It's like a companion for the rest of your life to, like, evolve and work on yourself. I was like, I have one. You're really into the analytical side of helping yourself. He's not really into like the spiritual stuff. I know he's really curious about it, but he's such a left brain person that if it just goes a little too far, he's just like, nope, that's weird, bye. And he just like runs away really quick. So I was like, here's one of the best things I've ever found that takes everything science, everything metaphysical, anything spiritual, and puts it in a supremely tangible workbook for you to really know yourself and evolve and like light that inner passion in yourself. And he just sent me a text message one day. He's like, what did you send me? He's like, did you literally just bridge spirit and science for me? He's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just kept reading that text message over and over because I was like, he always has such a great way of putting things into words for me. I've taken so much of the things that he said and put them into my own work because I'm like, that's the thought that I needed. Like, that's what I've been doing this whole time. Like, I do love the science of it, and I do love the spirit of it, and I love looking at like different theologies or mythology or religion or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But I was like, he's so good at just putting it in one sentence for me and being like, that's what I've been doing all along. And yeah, I mean, yeah, have the gene keys. That's what I did for you, bud. But yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm really trying to get all of these things to fit and work together and understand, like, not necessarily like, why are all humans here? But I'm like, how does my body work for me? How does the universe always show me how it gets better? You know, how do affirmations work? How does prayer work? Mantras, on and on and on.
Well, see, what I've found to be interesting as of late is so many things are actually universal. It's just a different perspective. Like churches will pray, and universal people will chant or do mantras or things like that, and it's all the same thing in my opinion. And then
oh, I read that. I know what you're talking about. It's like everyone is fighting over what it's called, but nobody is like discrediting that it exists. Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, I've been in multiple categories. Like, I still pray. I still talk to Jesus. I grew up with Jesus. I did grow up with the Christian Jesus, but after doing my own research, because I was just like, I want to know like about Jesus the man, not Jesus Christianity, because I've kind of had enough of that. No offense. It's just there were too many holes. There were too many questions that couldn't be filled. It just felt like somebody grabbed a bunch of frickin' papers and was like, this is what we should tell everybody. And they put it in a book. But then there was stuff missing for me, and it drove me frickin' nuts. And then, like, you find, like, the Dead Sea Scrolls and Gnostic texts. You can go into Sumerian tablets, just so many different things that have come way before that book. And I was like, I would sit there and I would pray and I would talk to Jesus, because, like, I was raised that this is the only book that you need. This is the only savior that you need. If you go out of that, like, you're basically going to hell. They're all wrong. We're right, right?
But every religion says they're right.
Yeah, I know. It's a little creepy, but I intuitively, as a child, I was like, this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good to me. So I dropped out of college right before my world religions class, and I was super sad about it. So I actually still have the book to this day. It's huge. It's like a big world religions book. And I just sat down and started just picking through and seeing, what are you guys doing? What are you doing over there? What are you doing over there? What are you doing over there? And I loved Hinduism and Buddhism first. Buddhism, still to this day, I think if I was baptized into a religion, I would probably pick Buddhism because of the passiveness of it and just the tranquility that anything that has to do with Buddhism has brought to me. I tattooed karma on my wrist when I was 18 because I was a huge believer in that. Where was I going with that? I got sidetracked. But I was always annoyed that I would find things like metaphysically that still applied to like ancient texts and stuff. And then I didn't really even know how to like regurgitate it to people at the time. I was just like, something's missing. We're missing something. The parts are too scattered. What's going on? And it took me, I mean, I don't know. I mean, could it have started with Hocus Pocus when I was a kid and just like liking stuff like that, and then eventually turned into just researching on my own? I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm here now with a podcast about it, so I guess the passion's never gone away, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'm also trying to get these notifications off my screen. How do I want to question this? So back to the intuition about you. Did you have like stories from when you were younger? Obviously, like positive things.
The main story I have, the main story I have. I was in an orphanage for a couple of years when I was a kid, and when my age group was being adopted out, I was the last kid picked. And so it felt really bad. It felt like I was the last kid picked for sports, except it was worse. And because nobody loved me, nobody wanted me, nobody cared for me. It was all of that I didn't have a place, And so I went in, I asked the nun if I could go into the chapel. And that was kind of odd because we always went in as a group. We always went in single file. We always sat, a certain place and everything. So anyway, the nun said, yes, I could. And so I was all by myself. And I went into the chapel and I looked at all the statues. We were told that the statues were helpful. We were never taught to pray to the statue. Okay, but I looked at Jesus, I looked at Joseph and Mary first, and then I realized definitely that they were statues. And then I looked at Jesus on the cross, and that was a statue, and he couldn't come down and save me. And then I looked up at the ceiling, and it was like, oh, God, you're here. You're here. You'll always be here. You'll never leave me. You'll never abandon me. So that was my first recollection of actually seeing something that wasn't there tangibly, to understand that God is always here. And if you don't believe in God as God, the universal power, the higher power, it's always there. It will never leave us. And so then when I went back home with my mom, which wasn't pleasant for the next 10 years or so, I always looked to the future for when I wasn't there anymore. And so I had to learn my intuition. I had to use my intuition, like, was she feeling good? Was she feeling bad? I had to use my intuition to pick up on her feelings so that I could protect myself and always be safe and do the right thing at the right time and be a good little girl and all that sort of thing.
Which in psychology, I was reading a lady's visits, and she said, yeah, my psychologist actually said I'm not an empath. It's actually just a trauma response. And that is where I get a little weirded out, because I know mental illness is real, but I also believe that all of us have clear senses, whether they're shut off, turned on, whatever. So yes, you might have had to use those empathic abilities for your fight or flight or your survival as a kid, but I don't think saying that intuition is a trauma response because you had to gauge everybody in the room. Because I've even seen things where it's like, oh, if you can walk into a room and feel the energies in the room, you're not intuitive, you're not psychic, you're not empathic, you're not any of that. You're actually just traumatized. And I just think I disagree with that. To me, I think spirit and science is supposed to work together, but when science is trying to trump out spirit, no, you're just severely traumatized, so you're basically living in a weird psychosis. It's just there's a lot more going on in the world than just everything in psychology, and I think science is still a baby compared to spirit and what we're all capable of. Yeah. I know that there's a great awakening that's happening.
Yes.
But I just get a little perturbed when I see stuff like that, because I'm I don't have tunnel vision of just psychology references. I don't mind looking at both of them and comparing them to spirit. But at the end of the day, my intuition isn't telling me the only reason that I've been able to help people and you've been able to help people is because we were traumatized when we were a kid in some facet or another, which is probably why I haven't found the right therapist, because that trips me out a little bit when they're like, no, honey, you're not special. You're actually really effed up. Just take this pill. You'll be fine. I'll see you.
I hate that.
Week.
Oh, yeah. God. Yeah. I sometimes, okay, I deal with some pain. Okay, some physical pain. Okay, it's part of my life. I'm okay with it. But I do take something to dull the pain. And so the doctor was saying, okay, would you like to try this antidepressant? And I said no. And finally, after 3 times of him asking me, within different visits, I thought, fine, I'll try it. it dulled my senses so bad that there was no feeling, no happiness, no sadness, no, excitement. I couldn't feel anything. And if anything will cause suicide, that will do it. And so anyway, I said,
if you feel like you're going to kill yourself, come to the emergency room. We'll lock you in the mental ward and detox you and just try another pill.
Yeah. So I said, I feel that we are given our emotions for a reason. And if we have our emotions, we need to deal with them. Even grief. Grief is one that scares the crap out of me. Mm-hmm. But if you have to have grief, you have to process it. You have to go through it. If you take a pill that doesn't let you process it, then you're going to always have that grief. You're going to hold it there in a spot. And I do not believe that we should hold it in a spot. I think we should process it and let it go, just like we process food. Mm-hmm. We process food, we eat it because we're supposed to, and then we process it and let it go.
Yeah, then get that shit out of you.
Pretty much. So, anyway.
This is a great wrap-up. I'm glad we ended with this. I'm like you, too. I was put on medication when I was 19 for a I don't even know what you call it. But I was like, you could shoot me right now, and I would be like, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah, whatever.
Like, I could die right now, and, like, I'd be okay with that, too. It was
but
just...
your light is too bright. You need to keep letting it shine.
Oh, I threw those things in the toilet for sure. It didn't last that long. I gave it probably a couple months, because they're like, give it a couple months, because, it's going to mess with the neurons in the brain, right? Give it some time. So I just went back to smoking weed, and I started taking shrooms every 6 weeks to get my mind right. And I talked to Jesus on shrooms the first time where, like, I took a lot. I was sitting on top of a tractor, and I was just like, Jesus, what's going on? And he, like, floated up next to me, and we just had, like, a really nice conversation. And I never got to tell people about these conversations till literally in the last couple years. Because even they just kind of go back in your memory bank. The longer you go away from the, like, event horizon, you're just like, what's the significance? Yeah. Like, why do I remember that? But now I really do remember the conversations, and I meditate often. Like I said, like, Jesus, what he actually came to preach about unconditional love. Like, I love talking to that one. I guess you could say it's more of like the ascended master aspect of it, but I still think there are some things in scripture that are valid, but I prefer to broaden my horizons when I go and think of all of divinity that is coming around to help us. Just kind of like if there's an owner of a restaurant and you have a bunch of employees, that's kind of how I think of like everyone else.
Yeah.
So, yes, before we get off here, I just want to plug your business really quick. You have a website. It's called writefactsllc.com. I'm going to link it below for anybody that wants to work with you personally or professionally. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. And if I find your letters, I'll probably just make a Facebook post for them later.
Awesome.
Yes. So before we get off here, Vitality Exposed is going to bring us, unlike Pluto, rose-colored glasses. Thank you again so much for coming on. I love you to pieces.
I love you to pieces right back. Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is great.
Yes.
Rose-colored lenses are tinting my senses, my altered memories, changing how I feel. Stuck in illusion, it turns to delusion. My life is like a screen, framing what I see. Feels like I'm crawling underneath the truth of stolen. I put it off, it's daunting.
This is the Hoosier Media Network, your home for podcasting.